In October 2016, in Lima, Peru, young designer Camila Vargas disappeared after going to a meeting arranged through a dating app. What promised to be a pleasant evening quickly turned into a mystery that filled her family and friends with anguish. No one could imagine that the truth, which a police officer would uncover 9 days later, would be far more shocking and devastating than anyone could have conceived. Before continuing, write in the comments where you're listening from and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any cases. Camila was a young woman full of life and talent. Recently graduated in design, she had decided to embark on the journey of her dreams through South America before diving into the professional world. Every country she visited was a new source of inspiration, an adventure she eagerly shared with her loved ones. She was known for her free spirit, warmth, and an insatiable curiosity about the world around her. Her trip represented the culmination of years of effort and the beginning of a future that seemed bright and promising. No one, least of all her, could imagine that this journey of self-discovery and joy would be interrupted in the most abrupt and tragic way possible, leaving an irreplaceable void in the hearts of those who loved her. On October 14, 2016, Camila arrived in the capital, the final stop on her itinerary. Her excitement was palpable, and she constantly communicated it to her family. Her mother, Adriana, would later fondly recall those last conversations. She was so happy, telling us everything with an enthusiasm that was contagious. We had faith that God would protect her on her journey. She recalled, during her first days in the city, Camila explored the streets, marveled at the culture, and planned her last days of adventure. Daily communication with her parents became a ritual of love and peace of mind, allowing them to follow her journey almost as if they were by her side, sharing each discovery and new experience. On the afternoon of October 15th, while resting at her hostel, Camila decided to use a popular dating app. She quickly made contact with a man named Mateo. The conversation flowed naturally and spontaneously, and within hours, they arranged to meet that same evening. It was an impulsive decision, characteristic of her adventurous and trusting spirit. For her, it was another opportunity to meet local people and experience the city from a different perspective. The date was set without much preamble, marking the beginning of a chain of events that would unfold with alarming speed and have devastating consequences, forever altering the course of her life and that of her family. Around 7:30 p.m., the security cameras of a busy bar in the area captured their meeting. The footage showed Camila and Mateo sitting at a table, chatting animatedly. They seemed comfortable and relaxed, like any couple on a first date. A witness who was at the scene would later tell authorities that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. They were laughing and talking normally. There was no sign of tension or discomfort. They just seemed to be having a good time, he stated. For nearly 2 hours, everything appeared to go on without incident. A pleasant evening that in no way foreshadowed the dark turn that events were about to take. Around 9:30 p.m., the couple was seen leaving the bar and walking towards the hotel where Mateo was staying. Shortly after, the hotel lobby cameras recorded them entering together. The last confirmed image of Camila alive was captured at 9:45 p.m. inside the hotel elevator with Mateo. In that brief moment, captured by the cold lens of the camera, Camila vanished from the outside world. She crossed a threshold from which she would never return. That moment marked the end of her journey and the beginning of a nightmare for her family, who were still unaware of the tragedy that had befallen them. The next day, October 16th, was not just any day, it was Camila's birthday. Her family, across the continent, tried to contact her from early in the morning to wish her a happy birthday, but the calls went straight to voicemail, and the messages went unanswered. The festive joy slowly turned into growing unease. It was unthinkable that Camila, so close to her family, would not respond on such a special day. With each hour passing in silence, the worry grew into unbearable anxiety. What should have been a day of celebration began to be overshadowed by a dark premonition that became stronger and stronger. After 3 days of agonizing and inexplicable silence, Camila's family could no longer bear the uncertainty. On October 19, convinced that something terrible had happened, they contacted the local authorities to officially report her disappearance. Javier, her father, later recounted the panic of those moments to investigators. "We knew something was very wrong. She would never have stopped communicating, especially on her birthday. It was simply impossible." With that call, the missing persons protocol was activated, and an investigation was launched, which in just a few days would begin to uncover a much darker truth than anyone dared to imagine. Once the report was received, the capital's police immediately activated the missing person protocol. The initial hours of the investigation focused on the most common hypotheses: a possible accident, a robbery that left her isolated, or even a voluntary decision to disconnect. However, the complete lack of activity in her bank accounts and social media accounts began to generate deep concern among the investigators. The case quickly escalated in priority as the hours passed with no sign of life. The absence of any trace was alarming and suggested that this was not an ordinary situation, but a much more serious and complex event. On October 21st, devastated by anguish and the lack of news, Camila's father, Javier, arrived in the city. His goal was clear: to be at the center of the search, to collaborate closely with the police, and to do everything humanly possible to find his daughter. From the first moment, he made himself available to the authorities, providing all the details that could be useful, from the last conversations to Camila's travel plans. His presence in the country not only demonstrated the desperation of a broken family, but also added a visible and human face to a tragedy that was beginning to attract media attention. Shortly after his arrival, Javier faced the cameras of the local press. With his voice broken by pain, but with unwavering determination, he made an emotional plea to the public. "I beg you, if anyone has seen my daughter, if anyone knows anything, no matter how small, please contact the police. She is a young woman, full of life, with a future ahead of her. We just want her to come home," he pleaded. His words, filled with heartbreaking sincerity, resonated throughout the country. His plea not only sought information, but was also a cry for help from a father holding on to the hope of finding his daughter alive. As Javier's call spread, the investigators dove into a monumental task, analyzing hundreds of hours of security footage from the entire area. The goal was to reconstruct Camila's last movements, minute by minute. The work was meticulous and exhausting, but crucial. Every image, every frame was a potential piece of a puzzle that needed to be solved urgently. This exhaustive analysis of the city's cameras became the primary line of investigation, a race against time to find a clue that could lead them to her before it was too late. The painstaking video analysis soon paid off. Investigators managed to identify Mateo as the last person seen with Camila. The hotel cameras left no doubt. Camila had entered the establishment with him, but there was no record of her leaving. Immediately, Mateo became the primary focus of the investigation. All the questions and suspicions began to revolve around him. The man, who had been a stranger contacted through an app, was now the key piece of the mystery. With Mateo in the spotlight, the police requested the GPS records of a car he had rented on October 16. When they cross-checked this information with data from the mobile tower of his cell phone, an unsettling pattern emerged. The data revealed a trip to a remote and arid area on the outskirts of the city, a desolate place that didn't match any normal activity. This digital clue was a crucial breakthrough, as it directed investigators to a specific location, a point on the map that, unbeknownst to them, was about to reveal Camila's tragic fate. On October 24th, based on the GPS data, search teams were sent to the barren hills. The terrain was difficult, and the search was arduous. After hours of tracking the area under an unrelenting sun, a police officer noticed something unusual, a small mound of earth that appeared to have been recently disturbed. His intuition and experience told him to investigate. It was an anomaly. In an otherwise monotonous landscape, a detail that caught his attention and would irrevocably change the course of the case. I felt a chill. I knew something wasn't right in that spot, he would later tell his colleagues. With extreme caution, the team began to dig at the marked location. Not far beneath the surface, they came upon a solid, large object, a suitcase. The atmosphere grew tense as they opened it. Inside, they found the lifeless body of Camila Vargas. The hope, already fragile, vanished completely, giving way to the harsh and devastating reality. The discovery, just days after her disappearance, confirmed the worst fears and marked the grim end to the search, opening a new and painful chapter, the house of her aggressor. The confirmation of Camila's death officially turned the case into a homicide investigation. The news shocked the public, and the pressure on the authorities to solve the crime intensified exponentially. The media followed every detail, and the story of the young traveler, whose dream turned into a nightmare, dominated the headlines. For the investigative team, every minute was crucial. The absolute priority was to gather solid evidence that could bring the responsible party to justice and give answers to a shattered family that could only ask for justice for their daughter. Just when all circumstantial evidence overwhelmingly pointed to Mateo, an anonymous call to the police station introduced an unexpected twist in the investigation. A person on the other end of the line, with a distorted voice, claimed that Camila's death had nothing to do with her date and that she had fallen victim to a dangerous local gang involved in robbing tourists. According to the informant, something had gone wrong during the robbery, which led to her being killed. This new theory, although seemingly implausible, forced the investigators to open a new parallel line of inquiry. Inspector Leo, in charge of the case, received the information with considerable skepticism, but he knew that the protocol required investigating any lead, no matter how unlikely it seemed. In an investigation of this magnitude, we cannot afford to leave any stone unturned. We owe it to the family and the victim to explore all possibilities, trusting that God will guide us to the truth, he told his team. The order was clear. A portion of the team would focus on verifying the truth of this new and surprising claim, while the rest would continue focusing on the main suspect, Mateo. A team was immediately assigned to investigate the alleged gang. Detectives moved quickly, interrogating known informants in the criminal underworld and reviewing the activity records of local criminals specializing in tourist robberies. The operation was carried out with the utmost discretion to avoid alerting any potential suspects. For hours, agents worked tirelessly, cross-checking data and searching for any connection, no matter how small, between the gang's activities and Camila's disappearance. The tension in the police station was palpable, as this new lead could change everything. After 24 hours of intense research, the new line of investigation came to a dead end. The alibis of the main gang members were solid, and no evidence was found linking them, directly or indirectly, to Camila's case. Everything pointed to the fact that the anonymous call had been a deliberate attempt to divert the police's attention. And so confusion. The lead was officially discarded, but not before consuming valuable time and resources at a critical moment in the investigation. Frustration was evident among the officers. With the certainty that they had been misled, the investigators abandoned the false lead and redirected all their efforts toward the only suspect whose actions aligned with the timeline of events. The distraction had ended, and now, with renewed determination, The focus returned entirely to Matteo. The lost time only strengthened the team's conviction that he was the responsible one, and that they had to act quickly to build an irrefutable case against him. The investigation was now entering its most decisive phase. Before continuing, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any case. With the investigation's focus once again solely on Matteo, the detectives began to meticulously reconstruct his movements from the night Camilla disappeared. The goal was to create an unbreakable timeline that would leave no room for doubt about his involvement. To do so, they reanalyzed security footage, not only from the hotel, but also from nearby establishments, looking for any detail that may have gone unnoticed. Every action of Matteo after 9:45 p.m. that night became a crucial piece of the puzzle they were assembling against him. Soon, a damning piece of evidence came to light. The security cameras of a store near the hotel captured Matteo on the morning of October 16th, just hours after Camilla was last seen. In the footage, he was seen buying a large suitcase, identical to the one found buried with the young woman's body. He also bought several industrial cleaning products. This purchase, made at such a suspicious time, was overwhelming evidence. For the investigators, it was proof that the crime had not only happened, but that it was followed by a calculated attempt to conceal the body and erase the evidence. Footage from the hotel continued to provide incriminating evidence. Other cameras captured Matteo using a luggage cart to transport the visibly heavy suitcase from his room to the parking lot. There, with difficulty, he loaded it into the trunk of the car he had rented that same afternoon. These images were devastating for any possible defense. They showed a coldness and premeditation that contradicted any claim of an accident. Every step Matteo took seemed to be carefully orchestrated to get rid of the evidence of his horrific act. On October 23rd, Matteo was taken to the station for formal questioning. At first, he appeared calm and cooperative, denying any involvement. He lied convincingly, assuring detectives that he had said goodbye to Camilla at the bar door and had not seen her again. He insisted that he knew nothing of her whereabouts, and that he was just as worried as everyone else. However, his composure began to crack as investigators started showing him the evidence they had gathered against him. When the detectives showed him the photos from the hotel's security cameras, his story changed dramatically. Cornered by the visual evidence, he admitted they had gone to his room together, but then he fabricated a new lie. He claimed they had argued and that she left in the middle of the night while he was asleep. The contradictions in his testimony were glaring and only served to bury him further. Lies have short legs. At that moment, we knew we were facing the perpetrator of the crime. One of the officers in charge of the interrogation would later declare, during the investigation of his movements, the police uncovered a detail that sent chills down the spines of everyone involved in the case. On the night of October 16th, while Camilla's lifeless body lay in the trunk of his rented car, Matteo had the cold-heartedness to go on a second date. He met with another woman he had also contacted through the same dating app. This act demonstrated a level of disregard for human life and an empathy deficiency that was terrifying even to the most experienced detectives. It was the definitive proof of his depraved character, with an accumulation of irrefutable evidence against him. The security footage, the GPS data from the car, the purchase of the suitcase, and most importantly, his own lies and actions after the crime, the police proceeded to make his formal arrest. Matteo was charged with first-degree murder as he was led to a cell. The news of his arrest spread quickly, bringing a bitter relief to Camilla's family and to a community that had followed the case with bated breath. Justice, though it wouldn't bring the young woman back, was beginning to take shape. The trial against Matteo began in November 2017 and became one of the most publicized legal proceedings in the country's recent history. The courtroom was always full, and every detail of the case was analyzed by the press and the public. The prosecution presented its case from day one, describing the act as a brutal and premeditated murder committed by an individual who lacked any trace of conscience. The prosecution's goal was clear: to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mateo had not only taken Camila's life, but had done so with a chilling coldness and meticulous planning. The defense strategy surprised everyone. In the courtroom, Mateo's lawyer argued that Camila's death was not intentional, but the result of a tragic accident during an intimate act of erotic asphyxiation that both had consented to, which, unfortunately, got out of control. According to this version, Mateo panicked upon realizing the fatality and, fearing he wouldn't be believed, made the terrible decision to hide the body. This argument sought to reduce the charge of first-degree murder to manslaughter, a difference that would have a drastic impact on the possible sentence. The prosecution systematically and forcefully refuted the defense's theory. The forensic experts who performed the autopsy testified that the marks found on Camila's neck were incompatible with an intimate game gone wrong. They indicated that the injuries suggested prolonged and violent pressure, applied with clear intent to cause death and not accidental asphyxiation. The physical evidence tells a very different story than the accused's. It speaks of a struggle and sustained violence. The forensic pathologist testified in court, dismantling the defense's primary argument. The prosecutor focused his closing argument on Mateo's behavior in the hours and days following Camila's death. With relentless rhetoric, he addressed the jury. A man who suffers a tragic accident does not go shopping for a suitcase and cleaning products. He does not methodically clean a crime scene, and certainly does not go on another date while the body of the person he supposedly loved is in the trunk of his car. These are not the actions of a frightened man. They are the actions of a calculating predator. Each of his words resonated in the courtroom, painting an irrefutable portrait of the defendant's guilt. To reinforce their argument about Mateo's character, the prosecution called other women who had met with him in the past to testify. Their testimonies were chilling. They described a pattern of aggressive, manipulative, and violent behavior. Although these testimonies did not directly refer to Camila's case, they served to show the jury that the accused had a history of predatory conduct. This further weakened the image of an unfortunate lover the defense was trying to build, and reinforced the prosecution's theory that Mateo was a danger to society. Throughout the weeks of the trial, Camila's family remained in the courtroom, enduring with admirable stoicism the pain of hearing the cruel details of their daughter's last moments. Their silent and dignified presence was a constant reminder of the victim and the justice that was being sought. Every day was an emotional test of endurance, but they remained strong, holding on to their faith and the hope that the justice system would not fail them. "We trust in the justice of God and of men," Camila's father repeated to those who approached to offer their support. After several weeks of testimonies, evidence presentations, and final arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. The tension in the country was palpable. The case had deeply affected society, and the anticipation for the verdict was immense. For the Vargas family, those hours of waiting were torture, the final stretch of an incredibly painful journey. They clung to the hope that the suffering they had endured during the trial would culminate in a guilty verdict. The entire community, which had followed the case with great interest, waited alongside them for a resolution that would bring justice to the memory of the young woman. On November 25, 2017, it was announced that the jury had reached a decision. The courtroom fell into a solemn silence as the jury spokesperson stood to read the verdict. With a firm and clear voice, he declared Mateo guilty of first-degree murder. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The decision was unanimous. Justice had been served. For Camila's parents, It was a moment of indescribable emotion, a mix of deep sorrow for their irreparable loss and bittersweet comfort, knowing that the person responsible for their suffering would pay for his crime. During the sentencing hearing held in February 2018, the judge addressed Matteo with relentless severity. Before delivering the sentence, he described Matteo's actions as an act of utter disregard for human life, marked by cruelty and a lack of remorse that horrified any civilized being. His words not only validated the suffering of the family, but also set a precedent about the gravity of the crime and the need to protect society from individuals like the defendant. The judge left no doubt about the atrocious nature of the events that took place in that hotel room. Based on the severity of the crime and the evidence presented, Matteo was sentenced to the maximum penalty under the country's law, life imprisonment. The sentence was met with applause and tears in the courtroom. In the front row, Camila's parents embraced, finally releasing the tension accumulated over months. Although no sentence could bring their daughter back, the certainty that her attacker would spend the rest of his life behind bars provided them with a sense of closure. Earthly justice had done its part, and now they only had to find a way to move forward. As a tribute to their daughter's life and spirit, the Vargas family decided to turn their pain into a force for good. It created the Luz para Camila Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting victims of gender-based violence and educating young people about the risks of arranged encounters through dating apps. Their goal was to prevent other families from going through the same tragedy. We want Camila's light to continue shining and for her story to protect others. May God give us the strength to carry out this mission, expressed her mother. Camila's case left a deep scar on the national consciousness. It triggered an intense public debate about violence against women, safety in the digital world, and the effectiveness of the judicial system. Although her story was tragic, it became a catalyst for change, sparking necessary conversations and raising greater social awareness. The memory of the young woman, the traveler whose dream was cruelly cut short, lives on not only in the hearts of her loved ones, but also in the movement born from her unjust departure. If you have followed this case to the end, please give the video a like, write in the comments what you think of the case, and don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell. We'll see you in the next case on our channel.